So Hasbro has recently released statements that they're going to move away from toy production and start producing more video games. I'm not a toy collector. I'm not a child, right? I don't care about toys, right? I'm a grown man. But like it's really interesting to see them say this because, I was looking at like what the actual toy community was saying about this, and a lot of them are coping and seething. They're talking about how the prices have gone up and the quality has gone down, how things are breaking inside the box, and how like they tried experimenting with this model where they didn't have see-through packaging and it caused sales to bomb because kids couldn't see what was in the box. It's like it seems like that company is just going way, way, way downhill, right? My understanding of that. Now, I think that's true for basically every company that isn't Nintendo. I know I focus on like the gaming community, but it really does feel like it's everything in every entertainment industry. It's not just Hollywood, it's not just Disney. It's across a wide range of industries, a lot of which that we don't even care about, right? It is like it is like a business wide, industry wide issue, right? Where people just cut profits and don't produce a good uh, a good product, right? Like, they fire all their talent and are surprised when they suddenly can't produce like the things that people want anymore, right? Like it's happening everywhere. It's becoming more and more it's becoming more and more interesting to see, and it's really exciting because, a lot of these man children are being forced to grow up. Star Wars fans have to acknowledge that that IP isn't something they should revolve their entire lives around. Harry Potter is going down. You know, Star Trek is becoming irrelevant. Warhammer 40K is becoming woke. All these franchises that like man children latched onto to try and pretend that they had a personality well into their 30s and 40s is just it's just such a sight to behold. It's so exciting to see that these people will finally be forced to grow up a little bit. But the thing that interests me about Hasbro, they're entering the gaming sphere. This explains everything. Hasbro has like a really big like backlog of toy catalogs, and they've been trying to produce like licensed products based on their IPs. I believe they own like Transformers and D&D and stuff like that. He-Man. Like I don't know anything about these brands because I'm not a child, right? I'm not a man child, but they have all these brands and that they've been ruining them. The toys are going downhill, the shows are crap, the live action Netflix series are crap, and they're they're trying to break into the next major industry. They're trying to find a community that is so tasteless, has no standards at all, is so buck broken, and is willing to shell out like millions of dollars for absolutely nothing, right? They're trying to find that promised land of just like endless profits for providing absolutely nothing of value, right? And they have decided that they are going to try and break into gaming. And I think this kind of explains what happened with Baldur's Gate 3, right? This extremely woke company, Hasbro, had their subsidiary, the extremely woke Wizards of the Coast, produce Baldur's Gate 3 with an extremely woke studio, Larian, and they produced one of the most overrated games of the past decade. Baldur's Gate 3, a game that nobody plays, nobody talks about, nobody remembers, but is like hailed by game journalists as being one of the best games of 2024. Jeff Keighley tried to give it a Game of the Year award. It was like heavily promoted for a couple of weeks. And in 2024, it's forgotten. But like for a while there, this thing was like the thing that people were using to replace Elden Ring, right? Because Elden Ring fell off too. Like they had to keep the discussion away from Nintendo products, which have legit remained good. So they leaned into Baldur's Gate 3. Like they promoted Baldur's Gate 3. They shilled for Baldur's Gate 3 as the greatest thing ever, right? And the reason for that, from what I understand, is that Hasbro is trying to break into gaming, right? Hasbro is a studio that has not like really done a whole lot in the gaming sphere, right? Their IP has not been milked to death the way that like Warner Brothers and everyone else have done in this space. So they might be the next company to come in and try and like fool people into thinking they're the next big thing. Like they're gonna have like these Transformer games and like whatever else IP they have. They're gonna produce like more D&D stuff, I'm sure. Like they're gonna do whatever they possibly can to produce video games and try to have their game journalist shills promote them as actual valid competitive titles, stuff that can actually compete against Nintendo, right? They're gonna try to do this apparently. And first of all, it's amusing to me that like the same kind of people who will like dismiss Nintendo for being too childish and being too kiddie are the same people who will like worship toy brands like He-Man or Transformers, right? It's crazy to see that, right? It's crazy to see that happen in real time, and I think we are gonna see that like more even before we start seeing these products. It's gonna be like a repeat of what happened with Embracer, I think, where like Embracer comes in, they acquire all these like major studios, they acquire Saints Row, Tomb Raider, da, da, da. Like, and everybody was like, the initial thought was like, oh man, these guys are gonna be like the next big players in the industry, like they own everything, right? And then what happened? They fell through, right? In not even 5 years, right? They put out Saints Row. It was such a big, huge disaster that they completely lost all momentum, and now they're like canceling a bunch of their projects, right? Because they can't pay for them. They completely lost all faith. The investors completely lost all faith in them, and they can't produce the games to stay competitive, right? And I do think this is going to be the same thing with Hasbro, right? Swen from Larian has already confirmed this, that like a bunch of the people from Wizards of the Coast that worked on Baldur's Gate 3 have already been fired. Baldur's Gate 3 was such a money sink in Hasbro's eyes that they fired a bunch of the people. Oh, by the way, yeah, Wizards of the Coast is having a bunch of problems. Hasbro didn't make any money this year. Like D&D did not have a major surge in popularity because of Baldur's Gate 3. Like it's safe to say that Baldur's Gate 3 was not a success, right? Like it's safe to say that like Baldur's Gate 3 is not going to turn things around for Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro. And honestly, I don't think you're going to see like anything like that ever again, right? Like it's gonna be a repeat of what happened with CG Project Red and The Witcher 3, where a bunch of people got attached to a mediocre open world RPG because there was nothing else on non-Nintendo platforms to get hyped about, and then the studio goes on to make absolute garbage, right? Like it is a tale as old as time, basically. It's the same. It's the same thing we've seen over and over again. But yeah, Wizards of the Coast is not going to be able to compete with Nintendo, right? None of these studios are going to be able to. Like we legit saw like an unholy alliance like between Sony, Xbox, PC gaming, all of their subsidiaries, pirates. Like we saw all these people rally against Nintendo and the Switch, and they completely failed. None of them have really left a dent in them, right? It's been really funny to see, and it's been really funny to see people cope about it. Trying to say that like mobile still makes more. Just like the PC gaming is still better. Oh, I can just emulate. Like it's been crazy seeing people like try and really write off just how dominant Nintendo has been this gen, right? I know I talk about this all the time, but like Sony and Microsoft are not competitively viable. They're partners, the major releases that put games out on their platforms. They are not competitively viable. They are not competing with what Nintendo is putting out. Baldur's Gate 3 did worse than like Tears of the Kingdom, which was a sequel to Breath of the Wild, right? How long is it going to take for like Larian to put together a new game? Like another decade maybe, and it's almost certainly not going to be as good as like Baldur's Gate 3. It's going to disappoint everyone. Not that Baldur's Gate 3 wasn't a disappointment, but like the bar is set really really low for those for those games, right? um yeah, we keep seeing this happen over and over and over again, and I've gotten really really tired of it, right? Like why exactly do we are gamers still in denial about the superiority of Nintendo products, right? Like, why exactly is no one talking about the struggles at Hasbro, the struggles of Wizards of the Coast, like, and their like shift into gaming, and how much of a disaster that's going to be? Like there is no possible way Hasbro is going to find studios that will be able to like successfully handle all of their IPs. And if they do, they're going to have to contend with the fact they're going to be extremely politicized. Exactly like what happened with the Netflix series, exactly what happened with the cartoons, exactly what happened with the product in general, right? Like they are not going to be able to put together a product that's going to be able to compete with what Nintendo is doing. I expect what you're going to see going forward is that Nintendo is going to start producing higher quality toys and start like infringing on Hasbro's territory, not the other way around, right? Like all Nintendo, like imagine how popular like Princess Peach is going to be, like with Princess Peach Showtime. Like it's possible that Nintendo could do that, right? Take on the Disney Princess line. Peach is already objectively better than every Disney princess combined. So, they are set to do that, right? They are set to start doing that, like to start branching out more into toys and into merchandising. I already own like a bunch of Nintendo products, so like it is going to happen in the near future. And I do think that companies like Hasbro, like Disney, will not be able to compete in the near future.